The wind howled across the jagged peaks of the Frostvale Mountains, carrying with it a cold so deep it seemed to seep into the very marrow of the earth. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns, obscuring the world beneath a ghostly white veil, and somewhere amidst the endless expanse, a lone figure moved with quiet determination. She was the Snow Queen, Elara, a woman of ethereal beauty. Yet her gaze held a melancholy so profound that it seemed the world itself had been robbed of warmth in her presence. Her hair shimmered like freshly fallen frost, silver strands glinting with each gust of wind, and her eyes, pale as ice, reflected a heart frozen in memory and regret. For decades, she had ruled the northern lands, her power absolute, her kingdom untouched by time, yet untouched by love as well. Elara had not always been a queen of ice. Once, she had been a girl of fire, full of laughter, warmth, and hope. Her village nestled in the southern valleys, where sunlight kissed the hills, and flowers bloomed in untamed abundance. She had loved freely, with a heart untamed, until that fateful winter when betrayal and fear collided to reshape her destiny. A man she had trusted most, a companion of her youth, had fled in cowardice as enemies descended upon their village. In his absence, Elara watched helplessly as her home burned, her family scattered, and her dreams turned to ash. The pain ignited something deep within her, a desire to control a world where she could never again be vulnerable, a world where emotions could not betray her. The frost became her shield, the snow her sentinel, and the mountains her prison and throne. Years passed, and stories of the Snow Queen traveled far beyond the frozen peaks. Travelers whispered of her palace, carved entirely from crystal and ice, gleaming under the pale light of auroras. They spoke of a beauty that was breathtaking but chilling, a power that commanded respect, fear, and awe. Few dared approach, and fewer returned to tell the tale. Yet beneath the legend, beneath the frost, Elara carried a secret ache, a longing for warmth she no longer allowed herself to feel. Her heart, though encased in ice, still beat for a single memory, a fleeting warmth she had never forgotten. One harsh winter, a traveler arrived at the base of the Frostvale Mountains, a man named Kael. He was not a prince, nor a warrior, nor a man seeking glory. He was a cartographer, drawn by the allure of uncharted lands and stories untold. His eyes were steady, a quiet determination reflecting a life of solitude and careful observation. He had heard the tales of the Snow Queen and felt a curiosity that bordered on obsession, not for power, but for truth. Many nights, by the flicker of his campfire, he pored over maps and notes, plotting his ascent to the icy fortress that had captured imaginations for generations. The snow tested him, biting and relentless, but Kael was driven by something beyond ambition. He was driven by a hope that somewhere within the cold heart of legend, he might find a spark of humanity. The climb was treacherous. Avalanches threatened to erase the path he had painstakingly traced, and frostbite nipped at his fingers and toes. Yet, as he ascended, Kael noticed signs of life. Footprints in the snow, the faint sound of music carried on the wind, crystalline patterns etched into rock faces that spoke of artistry beyond human hands. And then, on the precipice of a glacial cliff, he saw her, the Snow Queen. Elara stood at the edge of her balcony, the wind whipping through her silver hair, her gown cascading like frozen water, her eyes scanning the horizon as though searching for a shadow of what had been lost. For a moment, Kael felt the weight of centuries upon him, the loneliness of a soul untouched by love. And yet, there was a subtle tremor in her expression, a fragile thread of vulnerability that called to the human heart in him. Their first encounter was silent. Kael did not bow, nor did he kneel. He simply stood at a respectful distance, letting the wind and snow bridge the space between them. Elara regarded him with suspicion and curiosity, her eyes like shards of ice, sharp yet reflective. She sensed in him something different, not fear, not awe, but an unyielding courage wrapped in quiet kindness. For the first time in decades, she felt the stirrings of emotion she had buried deep, emotions she had thought frozen beyond reach. The snow around her seemed to still, as if even the elements hesitated to disturb this fragile connection. Over the weeks that followed, Kael remained in the vicinity of her palace, careful not to intrude, yet persistent in observation and patient in his approach. He left offerings, maps, sketches of the mountains, notes on flora and fauna, gifts that spoke of thoughtfulness, attention, and the desire to connect without words. Slowly, Elara permitted glimpses of her presence beyond the palace walls. At dawn, she would walk among her gardens of ice, the frost forming delicate patterns at her fingertips, and Kael would watch from a distance, his heart catching on the fragility of her beauty and the loneliness he recognized in her stance. It was a silent courtship, conducted in the language of gestures, glances, and the unspoken understanding of two solitary souls. Yet even as their bond grew, shadows of the past threatened to unravel it. Elara's powers, vast and unpredictable, responded to her emotions in violent waves. Storms erupted when anger flared, blizzards howled when sorrow consumed her, and the cold crept into Kael's very bones when fear or doubt clouded her mind. The Snow Queen had built her kingdom as a refuge from pain, and now that same fortress threatened to push away the first genuine connection she had known in decades. Kael, for his part, faced the agony of helplessness. Every gust of wind, every crack of ice underfoot reminded him that love in this realm was fragile and ephemeral. He had not come seeking glory, yet he found himself fighting for something far greater, the thawing of a heart that had been frozen for lifetimes. The turning point came one night under the auroras, when the northern lights danced across the sky in colors too vivid to be captured by any artist. Elara stood at the palace balcony, silent and contemplative, her eyes reflecting the luminous sky. Kael approached carefully, each step a testament to his resolve. He did not speak, for words would have been insufficient. Instead, he extended his hand, a simple gesture, yet one heavy with trust and hope. Elara hesitated, the weight of centuries pressing down upon her. Then, with trembling fingers, she placed her hand in his. The cold was real, yet beneath it, warmth surged, a reminder that even the deepest frost could yield to persistence, care, and unwavering presence. From that night onward, change began to seep into the kingdom. Storms softened, ice melted in ways previously unimagined, and the once silent halls of her palace echoed with laughter and conversation. Kael and Elara explored the mountains together, tracing paths hidden beneath snowdrifts, discovering frozen waterfalls, and uncovering the delicate beauty that had long been concealed by fear and isolation. Each shared moment thawed another fragment of her heart, and Elara began to realize that love was not weakness, but a strength that could defy even the harshest winters. But love, as it often does, demanded courage beyond comfort. The lingering shadows of her past, the betrayal, the loss, the fear of vulnerability, confronted her relentlessly. Elara learned that embracing warmth also meant risking pain, that allowing someone to see the raw, unguarded self could bring both joy and heartbreak. And yet, each time she faltered, Kael's presence reminded her that connection was not fleeting. It was the very force that made life worth enduring. Their love became a delicate dance of trust, patience, and mutual respect, a fragile flame nurtured in a kingdom of ice. Years later, the Snow Queen's legend shifted. Travelers no longer spoke solely of a distant, untouchable monarch. They spoke of Elara and the man who had braved mountains, storms, and centuries of isolation to find her heart. The kingdom transformed, not through conquest or fear, but through the quiet miracle of love. Elara ruled with wisdom tempered by vulnerability, her eyes no longer cold shards of ice, but mirrors of empathy, understanding, and hope. And Kael, ever patient, remained by her side, not as a savior, but as a partner, a fellow wanderer, and the keeper of her unthawed heart. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to help keep tales of love, hope, and resilience alive for everyone who needs them. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What moment in Elara and Kael's journey moved you the most? Comment below and let your thoughts be part of this story's legacy. In the end, the Snow Queen's heart remained no longer frozen, for she had learned that love, patience, and courage could thaw even the coldest of souls. And sometimes, the most extraordinary magic is not in power, glory, or immortality, but in the quiet, human act of allowing oneself to feel again. The end.